Up in the chat if we are live, if you can hear me, if you can hear the music, if you ready to get it in, let me know you're here. Purge the BS Saturday afternoon. Oh my goodness. All right, well, I will just adjust in the check it out, my son. What's up, Z? I see you, baby. In the chat early. You know what? This is going to be a fun one today. So I'm like I said, I'm going to give him a second to get in here because it's a live. You got to allow the thing to do what it does. But if you come in, make sure you throw a thumbs up in the chat. Let me know that you're in here. Hit the like, hit the subscribe. Welcome to another Purge of the BS Live. So here we go. Here we go. I'm just glad y'all can hear me. I'm just glad y'all can hear me. It has been one of the most eventful weeks in recent years. It has. And there's been a lot of back and forth going on with what I would consider good people on both sides, right? And I just want to turn the page and be unburdened by what has been and whatever the rest of that phrase was that was being said. And the reason why is because I understand that when somebody presents something to you in full form, and allows you the ability to see it from all different angles, if you choose to do so, you are in a much better position to react and respond accordingly. Now, I know this is a tough thing for a lot of people to grasp. I know. Some of us prefer the Matrix. We prefer to not really know, to just kind of mosey along, and it is what it is, as they say, right? But for some of us, we can't move like that because that's uncomfortable, right? So information starts pouring in from different sources, and you start to get what I call an objective opinion, where it's like you're seeing things almost from above. All buildings are the same height when you look at them from a satellite. You know what I'm saying? So you can see more, but you can only see it at the same height. So it allows you to judge the grounds a little bit more effectively, all right? With that being said, Donald Trump recently got reelected to the presidency. We can all agree that that happened, right? Because he is the way he is, and he is always out front, he's always got to be on social media, he's always got to be on TV, he's always got to be in front of us. It allows us, as the population, to be, I hate to say it, but a little bit more informed about what's really going on. And I guess to some people, it's like he talks too much, but I'd rather him talk too much than not say nothing at all. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather him be saying, you know, the quiet part out loud than keeping it to himself. Let me see what you're talking about. And then that allows me the strategic movement that I can come up with by having a little bit more information. So we can't worry about what, you know, being burdened by what was. What's about to happen is He's going in there with a very specific set of ideas and things that he wants to try to get done. It's going to cause a lot of ruckus because it's definitely going to go against the grain of what they're used to in Washington. It's going to go against the grain of what America's used to when it comes to politics and government. And it's going to go against the grain of pretty much everything that we're used to because it's never been done before. So the first time anything happens, and this ain't, I don't mean the first time he's become president. This is the first time that he's a president and the House and the Senate and all of them are all Republican. So he's going to be moving stuff up and down through there. So I got a couple of things that came down the pipe here, a couple of these clips here, just from him letting you guys know, letting everybody know where he stands and where he's coming from. Now, that doesn't mean we have to necessarily like it. What it means is we're informed, which is really the best thing you can be. Because once you have information, you can make movement based on the information. But if you don't have the information, you don't know what's going on, so you're just walking around in the fog. Mind cloudy as hell, okay? So in that regard, I would like to thank the American public for bringing things back out in the open. It's going to be, what do they call it, a shit show. It is. But that's because it's always a mess trying to clean up a mess. So whatever's going to happen is going to be a mess because it's already a mess. You see what I'm saying? Let me bring this on here. So this is, if y'all haven't been paying attention, he's been dropping these videos all week. They've been dropping these little vids all week to make sure everybody know what's going on. So we're going to check this one out together. Check this out.
It's my plan to dismantle the deep state and reclaim our democracy from Washington corruption once and for all. And corruption it is. First,
and hit them reactions. Keep tapping them reactions, man.
2020 executive order.
Make sure the algorithm knows we in here.
To remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively. Second, we will clean out all of the corrupt actors in our national security and intelligence apparatus, and there are plenty of them. The departments and agencies that have been weaponized will be completely overhauled.
Hope you're listening.
So the faceless bureaucrats will never again be able to target and persecute conservatives, Christians, or the left's political enemies, which they're doing now at a level that nobody can believe even possible. Third, we will.
The music's a good touch. I'll give them that. The music is a good touch.
Which are so corrupt that the judges seemingly do not care when they are lied to in warrant applications. So many judges have seen so many applications that they know were wrong, or at least they must have known. They do nothing about it. They're lied to. Fourth, to expose the hoaxes and abuses of power that have been tearing our country apart, we will establish a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to declassify and publish all documents on deep state spying, censorship, and corruption.
Did y'all hear that? He's going to declassify basically the records of who they spying on. And it's really more so he can find out, you know, and certain people can find out who's spying on them. But if you have been subject to it, you're going to find that there's going to be some privacy laws that were violated. There's going to be some class action lawsuits. There's going to be, of course, there's going to be some regular public uproar. But what I'm trying to say is there's going to be some openings here for people with sane minds to, I hate to say it, but take advantage of what's going on. While the melee is happening on one side and you make a movement on the other side. I'm telling you, this is the way to approach this situation. Being angry at each other for the next 4 years moves us nowhere. So that's goofy. Let's not do that. What we're going to do is we're going to take in all this information because we know everything Trump says he's going to do, he's going to try to do it. So if it gets done, what are you going to do about that? And if you look at it objectively and look at it and plan accordingly, you can actually use a lot of things to your advantage, which is why you got to pay attention. Make sure you hit that like and subscribe. Make sure you hit the reactions if you're in the chat, and make sure you say what's up if you just join it.
And there are plenty of them. Fifth, we will launch a major crackdown on government leakers who collude with the fake news to deliberately weave false narratives and to subvert our government and our democracy. When possible,
Fake
we
news.
will press criminal charges.
You
Sixth,
want to sue
we
the
will
hell out of
make
them.
every Inspector General's office independent and physically separated from the departments they oversee, so they do not become the protectors of the deep state. Seventh, I will ask Congress to establish an independent auditing system to continually monitor our intelligence agencies to ensure they are not spying on our citizens or running disinformation campaigns against the American people, or that they are not spying on someone's campaign like they spied on my campaign. Eighth, we will continue the
had to
effort
throw that in there.
launched by the Trump administration to move parts of the sprawling federal bureaucracy to new locations outside the Washington swamp. Just as I moved the Bureau of Land Management to Colorado, as many as 100,000 government positions could be moved out, and I mean immediately, of Washington to places filled with patriots who love America.
Now, that means a bunch of people would lose their jobs in D.C. And they would most likely be offered the possibility of relocation, or they would just lose their jobs. That's a tough one. So you might want to look out for that if you work in the down in the federal bureaus. His whole situation right now, and if you might not have gotten to that yet, but when I'm done with the clips I'm showing y'all today, you will understand that he's issued a warning and he intends to do so. And some people are not going to be happy with the results. Other people are going to utilize this in a way to really be informed so that they can make proper decisions for their families going forward. And that's really how I feel about it. What other person that wins the presidency is putting out videos the first, like he just got there. Like, you know what I'm saying? They hadn't even counted the last vote when he was creating this. So let me let him get his last minute in here.
And they really do love
in this
America.
one.
Ninth, I will work to ban federal bureaucrats from taking jobs at the companies they deal with and that they regulate. So they deal with these companies and they regulate these companies, and then they want to take jobs from these companies. Doesn't work that way. Such a public display cannot go on, and it's taking place all the time, like with Big Pharma. Finally, I will push a constitutional amendment to impose term limits on members of Congress. This is how I will shatter the deep state and restore government that is controlled by the people and for the people. Thank you very much.
All right, so let's discuss that very briefly. So that's the round one. That's the round one, right? That was the first one. There's multiples. Okay? So in round one, he's basically saying that he wants to get information on who's spying on who, how they're doing it, how much information was gathered, and he wants to make that information publicly available for people to do their own FOIA requests, which that's not bad. I mean, that's how you figure out what advertising is happening and how your information is sold. But what happens as a result of that is class action lawsuits, where the lawyers are going to jump on that. The lawyer peoples, they're going to jump on that. They're going to get a bunch of people for data and privacy issues to go against these companies and businesses to sue them for whatever information comes up after this stuff is made public. So that's Trump's doing that for his own situation too, like you said, for the people in the campaign that were spied on and things like that. But when you open up the door like that, you might see some things that you don't want to see. You see what I'm saying? And that's what's going to happen. And it's going to start some additional, basically some additional cases. And it's going to be against government organizations. It'll be government officials. It's like he's going to break the whole government, at least for a year or so. Whole situation is about to get torn down. So while they're doing that, we as the population have to be moving in a certain direction so that we can take advantage of it. I'm just being 100% honest, I know. Just being 100% honest. What you talking about, Z? What do you mean what happened? So nonetheless, making sure that my feed is right here. It looks like it's right. It says it's right.
If we don't have free speech, then we just don't have a free country. It's as simple as that. If this most fundamental right is allowed to perish, then the rest of our rights and liberties will topple, just like dominoes, one by one.
So this one is him. This is round 2. So the first round was for the government organizations, government situations being broken up and the spying from the government. The second one is about the media. So this is the media one.
They'll go down. That's why today I'm announcing my plan to shatter the left-wing censorship regime and to reclaim the right to free speech for all Americans. And reclaim is a very important word in this case because they've taken it away. In recent weeks, bombshell reports have confirmed that a sinister group of deep state bureaucrats, Silicon Valley tyrants, left-wing activists, and depraved corporate news media have been conspiring to manipulate and silence the American people. They have collaborated to suppress vital information on everything from elections to public health. The censorship cartel must be dismantled and destroyed, and it must happen immediately.
All right, I'm going to stop for a second because what I realize is he's talking about, the suppression and stuff that goes on through things like Google and some of the way the stories are situated within search features and the way news media outlets mainstream will change certain words and things to create narratives or edit things to create certain answers for questions. So he's going into this situation, but the truth is the First Amendment protects the right to free speech, but sometimes people be saying too much. So you do have to be, kind of police disinformation, but that's part of the problem. And that's what the issue is. They were policing information that they didn't like, but it wasn't untrue. You see what I'm saying? So it wasn't that it was disinformation. It was going against the narrative so they would suppress it. And that's where First Amendment was being attacked. So that censorship does need to be stopped, at least in my opinion, because I've run into that kind of stuff too. When you're dealing with trending topics, especially when you're on YouTube, the algorithm will respond based on the positive or negative responses in your transcript. So if you're talking favorably about something in the transcript, it reacts a certain way. If you're talking negatively about certain things in the transcript, it says it a different way. Or it sends it a different way. And you got to understand, this is not, you don't have to upload the transcript for it to be transcribed through YouTube's algorithm. It does that. That's why if you come back to a video later, even if you didn't give it closed captions, it already has it. So it scans for context clues and it feeds based on that. So if the narrative says be positive about this and your video is a negative thing, then someone can pay to have that not follow the same algorithm rules. And that's what was proven and shown in that Joe Rogan podcast situation when it got suppressed. That was somebody's hand on a button and someone actually being able to maneuver the algorithm to stop showing things. It wasn't even trending. The thing was getting 1 million views an hour, and it wasn't even on Google Trends. So if y'all didn't want us to know who was behind all of that, we've been saying it. It's Alphabet. We already know that. So just regulate them a little bit, make sure they're not doing some goofy stuff, and everybody will be fine. Right now, they're taking money to do certain things. So when Alphabet Corporation is dealt with accordingly after that Joe Rogan situation, I think some other stuff is going to come out as well. So for content creators, this might be a good thing. So, like I said, being well informed, this takes us into a place where we might actually be able to do something about it that helps us. When it's foggy, when it doesn't, serve certain situations, we can't do anything with that. The American public couldn't do anything with same-sex bathrooms and sports and stuff. That wasn't going to help them with anything specifically in a grand sense, so that's why they didn't vote for that. So it wasn't about all this other stuff. It was as simple as people are broke, and they're trying to come up. And the promises of the come up seemed a little simpler on the Trump side because he'll put some stuff in front of you, and you just got to sift through it and try to make out. I mean, I'm gonna be honest with you. That's what's going to happen. So let me finish letting him talk about what he's about to do with the media. So this could be good or bad. I don't know. Like I said, I think for a content creator, taking away some of those barriers would be good because sometimes I run into that stuff as well. And people sometimes, I'm not even going to say sometimes, most people would say I was crying foul. When I went on the internet and started to try to go to the forums, a lot of the forums are run by bots and stuff like that. So they're just like, nope. They're basically gaslighting you into believing that media censorship doesn't happen. Like that's not a thing that happens, right? And we know that. So when I go ask, why is this video that I'm reacting to being suppressed when somebody else is doing the same thing with the same video, but their opinion is the opposite of mine and theirs is being allowed to play, right? And I can't get a real answer to that from the YouTube folks or anybody. So it's really interesting how that works out. So I'm hoping that he does take an approach to deal with that because that has been a barrier for content creators for quite some time.
And here's my plan. First, within hours of my inauguration, I will sign an executive order banning any federal department or agency from colluding with any organization, business, or person to censor, limit, categorize, or impede the lawful speech of American citizens.
Lawful speech.
I will
lawful
then ban
speech.
federal money from being used to label domestic speech as mis- or disinformation. And I will begin the process of identifying and firing every federal bureaucrat who has engaged in domestic censorship, directly or indirectly, whether they are the Department of Homeland Security, the Department of Health, Human Services, the FBI, the DOJ, no matter who they are. Second, I will order the Department of Justice to investigate all parties involved in the new online censorship regime, which is absolutely destructive and terrible, and to aggressively prosecute any and all crimes identified. These include possible violations of federal civil rights law, campaign finance laws, federal election law, securities law, and antitrust laws, the Hatch Act, and a host of other potential criminal, civil, regulatory, and constitutional offenses. To assist in these efforts, I am...
Hold on a second. So the Hatch Act, what is that? It is an act to prevent pernicious political activities. It prohibits civil service employees in the executive branch, except the president and vice president, from engaging in some forms of political activity. I have to look into that a little bit more, but like I said, he gonna bring the big dogs as far as lawyers, and he is gonna sue the living daylights out of people in this next chapter here. I'm just being 100% honest here. There's a bunch of companies that are going to lose a bunch of money. They're going to get restructured. He's probably going to knock out a couple of monopolies in the process, and it's going to be interesting. So let me see what else I got.
To immediately send preservation letters, and we have to do this right now, to the Biden administration, the Biden campaign, and every Silicon Valley tech giant, ordering them not to destroy evidence of censorship. Third, upon my inauguration as president, I will ask Congress to send a bill to my desk revising Section 230 to get big online platforms out of censorship business. From now on, digital platforms should only qualify for immunity protection under Section 230 if they meet high standards of neutrality, transparency, fairness, and non-discrimination. We should require these platforms to increase their efforts to take down unlawful content such as child exploitation and promoting terrorism, while dramatically curtailing their power to arbitrarily restrict lawful speech.
Did y'all hear that? Did you hear that? I'm going to bring it back. Hold up. I'll bring it back. He's coming after the platforms that's pushing certain stuff too.
Protection under Section 230 if they meet high standards of neutrality, transparency, fairness, and non-discrimination. We should require these platforms to increase their efforts to take down unlawful content such as child exploitation and promoting terrorism, while dramatically curtailing their power to arbitrarily restrict lawful speech. Fourth, we need to break up the entire toxic censorship industry that has arisen under the false guise of tackling so-called mis- and disinformation. The federal government should immediately stop funding all nonprofits and academic programs that support this authoritarian project. If any U.S. university is discovered to have engaged in censorship activities or election interferences in the past, such as flagging social media content for removal of blacklisting, those universities should lose federal research dollars and federal student loan support for a period of 5 years and maybe more. We should also enact new laws laying out clear criminal penalties for federal bureaucrats who partner with private entities to do an end run around the Constitution and deprive Americans of their First, Fourth, and Fifth Amendment rights. In other words, deprive them of their vote. And once you lose those elections, and once you lose your borders like we have, you no longer have a country. Furthermore, to confront the problems of major platforms being infiltrated by legions of former deep staters and intelligence officials, there should be a 7-year cooling-off period before any employee of the FBI, CIA, NSA, DNI, DHS, or DOD is allowed to take a job at a company possessing vast quantities of U.S. user data.
Wow. So he's trying to put employment limitations on people that basically used to work within certain segments of the government going back into the private sector. So let's say the CIA or a guy at the CIA going to work for Facebook. You know what I'm saying? That's interesting. See, the thing that makes all of this interesting is you always have to wonder who came up with the whole list. Because I don't think he sat there by himself and came up with this. I'm sure he had some input. But this list ain't Project 2025. I've seen what Project 2025 is, so I'm waiting to get to that stuff soon when he starts talking about that. But this stuff about the mainstream media and all that, that's not really part of what the Project 2025 scare is about. So that's going to be a whole different episode. We're going to get to that. But nonetheless, let me finish letting him talk about what he's doing with the data interference issues, where people who were trying to speak the truth were being suppressed, and it wasn't by accident, it was by government interference, like literally saying to Facebook, to Instagram, to Twitter at the time, to whoever, don't put out any stories that say this, even though it's not necessarily false. We just don't want people to hear it. And they've been doing that. And we've been talking about it throughout the Trump campaign, about how they were spinning the narrative so hard that it should have been criminal. Well, now it's about to be criminal, and he gonna come for everybody. So watch the news change up soon, if it hasn't already. Watch how your news networks all of a sudden they change up. It's not gonna be on no terrorism and Hitler. They not gonna say none of that no more. That's dead. That's dead. He's killed that. And I'm here for it. You know what I'm saying? I didn't like that anyway. That was goofy to just have everybody almost afraid for their lives. And people are still upset right now. But meanwhile, he about to put the brakes on a bunch of stuff. And if you pay attention, you'll be able to manage through it much better than you think. I'll be honest with you. Let the melee start. Let the dust cloud happen over here to the left while I'm chilling over here to the right. You see what I'm saying?
Fifth, the time has finally come for Congress to pass a digital Bill of Rights. This should include a right to digital due process. In other words, government officials should need a court order to take down online content, not send information requests such as the FBI was sending to Twitter. Furthermore, when users of big online platforms have their content or accounts removed, throttled, shadow banned, or otherwise restricted, no matter what name they use, they should have the right to be informed that it's happening, the right to a specific explanation of the reason why, and the right to a timely appeal. In addition, all users over the age of 18 should have the right to opt out of content moderation and curation entirely and receive an unmanipulated stream of information.
So that's basically to turn off the algorithm that's designing the feed. So we don't really, we have the ability to clear it out, but to just turn it off. Like, just, you search what you search, everything's random, which is what he's talking about. But if you understand, like, I'm like I said, let's put this back into perspective. For anybody that's a content creator, if you get throttled or you get shadow banned, there's ways that you can see it, but nobody ever tells you. Like, they never send you a message to say, hey, you're getting shadow banned for a little bit because we don't like that short that you did. Or somebody said to us that they're paid to filter anything that covers certain keywords. So even if you weren't speaking negatively about something, you might have hit certain keywords in the video, and the algorithm has been designed to respond a certain way to that. And that response was paid for. And that's where the problem is. So, like I said, some stuff, man, you know, I don't mind. That's cool. Let's talk about it. Because I've been dealing with that crap off and on for the last year. And it's very frustrating. If you don't understand how you can end up in YouTube purgatory, where you can put a video out and it just won't send nobody nothing. It'll sit in your page, and and if they come to your page, it won't even be sitting like in the first part of the page. They'll have to go click on videos and specifically look for the video. You see what I'm saying? So they don't know that you put it out. If they hit your page, they don't see it there. This is a new video. You just put it out, right? They won't see it if they hit your page initially. They have to go to the videos link and find it. So the only way to do that is if you share out the link directly. And when you share out the link directly, it comes from different traffic. It's not the YouTube algorithm that's supposed to be pushing to the YouTube audience, which is really who you're trying to get at when you're doing your video and putting it on YouTube. So if you post it, let's say on Facebook, and you share it, or you shared it from YouTube to Facebook, and you click it from there, there's this thing on the end that says like feature equals share, right? It tells the algorithm that this was a shared content. So that's why it knows in the analytics where the play came from, like where the traffic came from. So it'll allow you to get share traffic. So that's like if people on your Facebook page hit the link, but it can cut you out of standard search traffic. So you still miss out on the millions of people getting the impression, which will come down their homepage on YouTube. So the only way somebody can see it is if they're on your Facebook and happen to click it and happen to come to YouTube. But if they're on YouTube, they're not going to see it at all. So that is what shadow banning will look like, right? But most people kind of just let it go. Trump ain't letting it go this time. He wants people to at least know why, at least know that it's happening, because it was happening and people didn't know why. And they're trying to say, yo, this is what's going on. And people are like, no, it's not. You're crazy. But they weren't crazy. They were 100% right. 100% right.
If they so choose.
All right, let's see what this last piece.
The fight for free speech is a matter of victory or death for America and for the survival of Western civilization itself. When I am president, this whole rotten system of censorship and information control will be ripped out of the system at large. There won't be anything left.
Damn.
By restoring free speech, we'll begin to reclaim our democracy and save our nation. Thank you, and God bless America. If we don't have free speech.
All right, so that's the free speech situation. So we've got spying and government information overreach, privacy issues. That's number one. Secondarily, we've got censorship issues. That's mainstream media. That's spinning narrative. So that's number two. So already, so Kamala Harris was right about one thing. If she wasn't right about nothing else, he is coming in with a hit list. You know what she said? It was a to-do list versus a enemies list or whatever, a hit list. But if what is being said is true, why would we have a problem with him taking advantage of his position to take care of that, so that the ones of us that don't have the ability to make any changes to some of those things? So like I said, we haven't even talked about money and businesses and taxes and tariffs yet. He's talking about suing people, basically, and gutting the whole federal government structure and moving jobs out of Washington, which is going to be interesting. That's what we got so far. That's what we got so far. So another thing that happened was I've been having this discussion with folks, trying to help with understanding what we're going to do moving forward, right? Like, what are we really going to do? Nobody can go backwards. It's not going backwards. We are moving forward. We want to move forward, right? But we still beefing. We still beefing. We cutting at each other for no reason. We cutting at each other when we should be working together. We should be working together. Why are we not working together? Even if you're afraid that something bad is going to happen, we got to work together. If the apocalypse happened, we're going to have to work together a little bit. So we might as well start here. This guy's putting out all the information right on the table for you. He's laying all the cards out. Everything he's trying to do, at least most of what he's trying to do, because there is the situation with Iran that is the back end situation that's going to happen. I'm not sure what's going to be the result. I don't think it's going to be a war, but I definitely think there's going to be some quick action towards Iran. Iran deal or whatever, that was like Trump's hiccup on the last thing, and I think he has some bad mojo left for that situation. That's just my early opinion on that. We'll come back to it in a few months when he actually says what he's going to do with that. But I'm wondering why we can't work together. Right now, even YouTube is scared to push out certain information because they don't know what's coming. But we can work together. Like, so what if they censor disinformation campaigns? That's a good thing, right? I thought it was a good thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if someone, whomever it is, or an entity stops disinformation campaigns designed to spin negative narratives that don't really exist, is that a bad thing? No, it's not. It's the problem is whose opinion matters. Like, somebody might think something's negative versus somebody thinking something's positive. So the most important piece of it all is truth. Be true and objective and present all the information and allow the viewer to take it all in. So there was also, if you're just joining in, thank you for stopping, and make sure you put a thumbs up in the chat. Let me know you're here. Bang the like, bang the subscribe. We're just talking about what's going on, trying to reel my people's back in after this election. Things have been crazy. Everybody's losing their minds, and I need them to just reel it back in because we got some work to do, okay? So what's very important to understand is there are talks about things behind the method, like canceling the Department of Education, I believe it is. And I don't really know if that's a good idea, bad idea, because really I don't really understand the federal Department of Education situation, but they do fund certain schools. And I think they fund, private schools and, but I thought the states funded the public schools and the feds fund the private schools. There's some nuances to it, but the basic thing is Trump's recently been a big proponent for school choice. A lot of us like school choice. If you can get your kids somewhere else, you get them somewhere else. What I think they should do is invest some money in helping those families who might want their kids to go to certain schools, helping them with the transportation in some way, if you can. I don't know. Or giving them at least like a tax write-off for doing so. If they got to take the child to a different school, something along the lines of helping the parent financially with the trip that they got to make, that, because there's no bus doing it because the kid's in a different zone. That would be cool. We'll see if they get around to that. But nonetheless, Trump answered some questions about school choice and a few other things, and I wanted y'all to hear that, watch this with me, because it apparently it scared a few people. Other people are kind of confused but trying to understand it. But yeah, he literally said he was going to shut down the Department of Education. So what that means in a grand sense, I'm going to let you guys decide, okay?
President, that event you were at last night raises millions of dollars, a lot for, Catholic schools here in the New York City area. We've got a question from Anthony in Wisconsin, a swing state, and it's about school choice. Listen to this.
I am Anthony from Appleton, Wisconsin. I have high-functioning autism, but my autism means I am only allowed to go to public schools that teach things and promote things against my values and faith. This makes life hard and confusing. When you become president, what can you and J.D. Vance do to help other students like me to have a choice of schools?
School choice.
Well, thank you very much. And it's all about school choice. That's one of the biggest things on my platform. It's about school choice, and it's also, we're going to get it out of Washington. If you look at our schools, we spend more per pupil than any other country. Norway, Sweden, Denmark, I hate to say this, China, can you believe? Top 5. They have great school programs. We are number 40.
I hate to say this,
sort of
China.
Like at the bottom of the list. We spend more per pupil than we're moving.
He does not like China, boy.
It all out of Washington, and we're going to let the states run the schools. So you give the schools to Iowa, they're going to be another Norway. It's going to be great. You give them to so many different states. Indiana, they're dying to do it.
Now, real quick, I know some people are going to say because he mentioned Norway, which is mostly a Caucasian area, that he's somehow being racist by mentioning that they have a good school system or whatever their school setup is. But before we jump onto that, let's just be honest, most of the all black areas don't have the best school systems. And I don't know if that's because of funding or what, but if you put them in like percentage wise, it's more skewed that way. So naturally, if he was mentioning a country, he would be mentioning a country that has a predominantly Caucasian group involved. Notice he didn't say China, and we know the Chinese folks be raising their kids in school and have them smart as hell by the time they're 7, right? But what he did mention was the organization of it, and I think that's what he's trying to talk about here. But he still said he's going to shut down the Department of Education. So let's let him explain that a little further, please. Continue, sir.
They can do it for less than half, and you will have those states competing with the best.
Get rid of the Department of Education.
It's going to go
Right.
And every building in Washington. You go by Department of Education. I'm going to have one person working there, maybe with a secretary. I don't mean a secretary.
You want it all. You want it all to be local now.
Stenographer, because we want to make sure they're teaching English, right? Let's say reading, writing, and arithmetic.
None of the books.
Not transgender. We're not going to be heavy.
What about our history?
Right. Well, and
all of that. Absolutely.
Mr. President, the key about school choice is there are a lot of people who would love to be able to take the money that they put into taxes and put it into a different school, not the public school, but the Catholic school, the private school.
Like Arizona.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Mr. President, we got a question.
And you're on board with that.
School choice is one of the most important things we're going to
Now, you heard what he said. People want to take their money and invest it in specific schools, not public schools. So that means the public schools are going to lose the funding. So just understand, public schools are going to lose some funding on this. Okay? I know it's going to be tough to deal with for a lot of folks and tough to hear, but that is what's going to happen. Public schools are going to lose a lot of funding because the public schools were where they did some of those alternative learning styles, and that's where the focus is going to be. So just keep that in mind. If you're a public school teacher, just keep in mind that it'll be books needing to be removed and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be they're going to clean a bunch of stuff out. Take the rainbow flags and stuff down, and they're gonna keep it basic. You have like an American flag and maybe the state flag around, and they're gonna that's it. In school, you can do whatever you want at home, raise whatever flag in front of your house, put it in your car, whatever. But as far as the schools, they're probably just gonna break it all the way back down to the basics. Like you said, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and that's going to be uncomfortable for some people, but for some folks, they'd rather their kids just learn school stuff at school and not so much of the other stuff, at least not in the early stages. Maybe in high school a little bit more, but in, elementary school and kindergarten and stuff like that, with the drag queen hour and all that. It was a bad idea, okay? So he's talking about that. So let me let him continue a little bit. Hold on, let me see what else we got.
Absolutely.
Because we have the worst. Think of it. Out of 40, we're number 40. Yeah. And yet we're number 1 when it comes to spending per pupil. Does that sound good?
Well, there's a bill that just passed the Ways and Means Committee. It could pass in your first 100 days as president. Sounds like you'd sign it.
I would sign it. Anything to do with school choice also. Okay. But also, separate from school choice, we're going to take the Department of Education, close it. I'm going to close it. We'll have one person, could be you if you decide to retire.
Okay.
Mr. President, here's what bothers
central casting.
Here's what bothers me about that. So let's say you have a liberal city, let's Los Angeles, San Diego, and they just decide we're going to get rid of that history. We got new history. This is America built off the backs of slaves on stolen land. And that curriculum comes in.
Then we don't send them money.
So that's right there. That's the hot clip that they're moving on the internet. So he said that the schools, if they're pushing critical race theory, that they would not qualify for federal funding. So that is interesting. That's interesting. Because that's what critical race theory is, that this is stolen land, a country built on the backs of slaves, white man evil, black man oppressed, until perpetually eternity, right? And that's what critical race theory is. And to be honest, the theory itself is untrue because there's plenty of people who don't follow that path. And I'm just going to be honest from my own experience. When I was coming through school, I was taught that all black people were just descendants of slaves. It wasn't until I think in my college years I started finding out that there was people who were not direct descendants of slaves. They were just black people that were people who had settled the land, who had come from other places and were explorers before Christopher Columbus even got here. The indigenous people that were here were not all just Native Americans. Some of them were of Haitian descent, Jamaican descent. There was a lot of people here that weren't from Africa, but they were black. And as the populations integrated, of course, there were children made, and we end up with this black population. So everybody here didn't come from that. I just didn't know that at first. I thought everybody was on the plantation first. We all our history started there. But then I found out that that wasn't really the true story. So here's the flip side. Why not teach that history instead of critical race theory? Like, I see why they want to get rid of it, because the only thing that critical race theory says is white man bad, black man oppressed, the black people are never going to get ahead because they're always behind. And it keeps that whole idea going. It keeps racism going because even people that don't deserve to think that they're ahead of certain people actually think they're ahead of them. So that causes a little bit more friction that doesn't have to be there. So what Trump is saying is that schools that teach that method would be removed from federal funding. But what he also did not say, or at least I didn't hear him say it, was like, what are we replacing that with? Because there is a story to be told about America. Like, history class has to happen. So we're not going to skip slavery, right? We're not going to not mention it. We can't not mention Christopher Columbus. We can't not mention the Native Americans who were here, the indigenous people, or, you know, anything. We can't not mention these things if we're talking about American history, right? So I don't believe necessarily that we're removing the history itself. I think they want to reframe it is probably the best way to, like, imagine if history class was this, right? That America was integrated by a number of cultures from around the world. And over time, there were conflicts and things that ensued. Slavery happened, and, you know, treaties were made. Things like that happened, and there was an element of racism that spanned over a course of a number of years. But here we are today. And because of the movement and the people of those yesteryear, we have certain rules and laws in place that are obvious signs that things have progressed, right? Obvious. So if it's obvious that things have progressed, why do we focus on teaching young brown children that all of them are just the descendants of slaves? It minimizes the experience of their bloodline. It minimizes whatever they really came from, because when you really dig into it, you'll find that only about 40% of the population was the direct descendant of just slaves. A lot of them were mixed in and out between, I hate to say it, massa. Sometimes it was the, you know, a runaway slave went somewhere else and became involved with the indigenous people in that area. There's so much mixing up that happened in that process that there's no way that you can just think black man oppressed, white man bad, and you walk through your life like that. You can't move forward like that, because that's not where we are anymore. Not to say that there's not some racist people out there, or at least prejudice, if nothing else. They're all over the place. But if you look at it in real numbers, they're the smaller part of the majority now. So let me finish letting him. He said he's shutting down the Department of Education, the federal Department of Education, but he did say he was branching it out to the states. So each state would have more control over the education system within the state. So that's interesting. I didn't know that the states weren't really in control of that. But what he is doing is he's taking away money. So I guess the states ain't getting the federal money at all.
We would save half of our budget.
Okay.
And we're going to save. But if they want to
Nobody's
you
getting no
lose
money.
control when
Check
you go
that
out.
out.
we've
Nobody.
lost we're number 40. We're last on the list. Okay. We're the worst there is, and we spend more money there. And a lot of states, look, you know what's going to happen. The states that are well run now, like, I don't want to say specifically but you take Indiana. It's so nice. No debt, everything is good. Our beautiful Iowa, right, that I win every time. Take
He had to throw that in. I win that every
out
time.
of the 50, we have close to 40 like that. Then you have the laggards run by guys like Gavin Newsom, who is, you probably won't do as well there, but there you have to watch it a little bit more.
Right.
But no, if they want to get cute, then you don't send them the money.
So, Mr. President, we got a question from my home state of Texas. This is Don.
Hold on a second. He said if they want to get cute, you don't send them the money, man. He be talking off the cuff, bro. So what he's saying is this. Nobody getting no money. That's what, as far as the school system. He said he's going to break the whole department. Well, he'll break the departments down and create a state-level institution that gets some level of federal money that's spread across all of the states. That's what it sounds like. So it'll be the state's problem with their own school system. It's not a federal problem, it's a state problem. Similar, and I think that's the whole Republican thing, is moving more of the responsibility back to the states themselves, and the states have their own operating ideas, and it gives the states a little bit more power over their own local laws and things like that. So I see what the goal is, but not everybody wants that. A lot of people like umbrellas that cover everything, so they don't have to think about it. They don't have to worry about it. But if you take away from certain historical teachings. I'll tell you what, I'm not going to teach my granddaughters or my grandchildren in general that all black people on the planet or all black people in America are descendants of slaves. I'm not going to teach them that. I'm going to teach them that slavery occurred and that there were black people enslaved by white people, and there were black people enslaved by other black people, and there was black people enslaved by the Native Americans, and I'm going to teach her or them that, right? Because that doesn't put them necessarily in that class. That's just saying this is what was going on at that time. You are not oppressed. You are in the world as it is now. You are not those people. You are not that. You see what I'm saying? So I get what he's trying to say. I get what he's trying to pull out of it. But a lot of people are going to look at it as they're trying to whitewash history. And I don't think you can get away from telling the story of America without mentioning slavery. But what they don't mention, or what they didn't mention when I was coming up, was that not everybody who was black was a descendant of slaves. They told us the opposite. And that was critical race theory. And so that's what made affirmative action necessary. That's what made certain things become the norms for black culture, was because the thought was all of us came from slavery and a bunch of like a bunch of people who just were out here and just savages, basically. And so we started acting like savages. And that became the stereotype. And that it also became the problem that we have. And we still got that problem. A lot of us are savages. Just out here being savage. So let me give Fox and Friends and them a couple more minutes here. Hold on.
Question about accomplishments.
Good morning, Mr. President. My name is Don Albright. I live in Katy, Texas. My question is, what is something that you did not accomplish in your first term that you would like to accomplish in this term?
Well, we had a great first term. We had the greatest economy we've ever had. We had the strongest borders we've ever had. We rebuilt the entire U.S. military. Unfortunately, they gave a lot of it to Afghanistan in one of the worst times ever. I think the biggest thing for me in terms of government is great people. I had great people. I had a lot of great, like Bob Lighthizer and Trade. We had great people. But I had a couple of clinkers that I would not want again. And I didn't know, you have to understand, I was there 17 times in my entire life. All of a sudden, I'm president. I'm saying, wait a minute. And people are recommending different people. Of the people, usually we got it right, but there were some ones that we didn't get right. I now know everybody in Washington. I think it's been enforced. I know people in Washington that nobody ever heard of.
Now you'll be the most experienced president.
I think I'll be the most experienced guy. I know the good ones, the bad ones, the dumb ones, the smart ones, the loyal ones,
right.
The people that want to.
What about the list of the dumb ones? Let's hear that.
Oh, I give you a list.
All the people that were involved.
Most of them are the people that I fired. When you fire, Biden has never fired anybody. Never. He should have fired a lot of generals and a lot of people for Afghanistan, as an example. I took out ISIS. I promote people. I beat ISIS. It was supposed to take 5 years. It took 1 month. I did it in 1 month. We have unbelievable generals. We have unbelievable military, but not the guys like Milley that you see on television all the time. We have great people.
Are those generals fired when you're there? Because some of the people involved with Afghanistan are still
almost
there.
every person that speaks badly of me. Look, firing, I know a lot about firing.
So he said everybody that speaks badly of him is the reason why they're doing that is because he fired them, and not because they were correct in whatever it was. Now, if you don't already know, Afghanistan was that sucked. They left all the equipment there and basically armed an enemy for no reason at all. So that was definitely a bad one. That was a bad idea. That was a really bad idea. But I hear what he's talking about. I worry about how we kind of skipped over the Department of Education being shut down and what's going to be in place of it, or how we make up for whatever it was that it was actually providing, which he said that it was spending money and it was a high per pupil amount, right? He didn't really mention how much that amount was, but that's neither here nor there. The thing is, what happens when you remove that amount from the pupil? So are we not going to be able to give free lunches to the kids anymore? How does that work, right? Now, I'm sure they'll still go through the little form that you fill out every year, but I think that recently a lot of schools went to free lunch for everybody. It didn't matter if you were on food stamps or whatever it was. You just got free lunch because you were a student in the school. So that's been pretty cool. So I'm hoping that they don't get rid of that. But I would imagine if the goal is to spend less at the federal level, if that's federally subsidized, then they'll probably come for that first. So free lunch kids are about to not have free lunch anymore. Not all of them, but the ones that didn't qualify for it before, they just let everybody get it. So that's going to suck a little bit. All right, we'll give it another minute here.
When you fire somebody, you can do it nicely and take a year and just, not working out, blah, blah, blah. I've done that. And I've done it. Get out. You're fired. Get out. And
I saw that on TV.
But can I tell you, I did quite well. So I've done it always. You know, at the end, when you get fired, you get fired. It doesn't matter. You might as well just do it quickly. And then if you're famous, like me, they read a book.
Right.
Because the sleaze bags come out and they offer them $1 million to write a book. And then sometimes they'll say, I want to make it good. No, we're not interested in a good book. We're only... So I end up with more books than, I just end up... And I end up with... It is true. If Bush fired somebody, nobody cares about Bush. They couldn't care less about Bush. I think you do. You're like, oh, you like Bush.
Yeah. I do.
I'll use it. Let me use it differently.
Are you like W? You guys get along?
He's fine. Well, yeah, but I disagreed with what he did so much. Right. I just disagreed with.
So
I disagreed with what
but
got us into the Middle East. We spent $10 trillion. We got nothing. So.
Now that's an honest answer. Y'all that don't like Trump, I know how it is, and I'm probably, like I said, people just want to hate the person, and instead of just listening to him and understanding he's in the position, and we got to deal with it. But just listen to him when he's talking. He's saying everything. You see what I'm saying? He is fully transparent. He's fully transparent. Nothing hidden. He tells you if he don't really like somebody. He told you that he was cool with George W. Bush to a degree, but he didn't like a lot of the stuff that he did. He didn't like going into, I think it was Iraq or whatever. Like, he said it. Even though they're technically part of the same party, because George Bush was a Republican, right? Pretty sure he was. So even within the party, he's willing to admit, yeah, I didn't really like that stuff that guy was doing. So that's honest. That's honest. And I respect that to a degree.
Except death.
So you like kids? Here's a 10-year-old from Tennessee has a question for...
You see how that could be chopped up? So you like kids, and then get another clip that's like, yeah, I love them, or something like that. You can chop it up. So
45th president.
President Trump, I'm Daniel, and I'm 10, and I'm from Tennessee. What was your favorite president when you were little?
Who was your favorite president when you were little?
So I liked Ronald Reagan. I thought he was... Look, I didn't love his trade.
Now, he said when you were little, Reagan was like the 80s. I don't know, Trump would be like 40-something at that point. I don't know. I'm just trying to do some math here. Yeah, so he'd be like in his late 30s. So that's nowhere near a little kid, but okay. So his favorite president was Reagan. And... why was that?
I'm a very good trade. I've made some great trade deals for us, the USMCA. That wasn't his strength, but he had a great dignity about him, Ronald Reagan. You could say, there's our president, more than any others, really any of the others. Great presidents, well, Lincoln was probably a great president, although I've always said, why wasn't that settled? I'm a guy that, it doesn't make sense. We had a civil war.
Well, half the country left before he got there.
Yeah.
Did you hear what he said? He said it didn't make sense to him why they had a civil war. Why they didn't just settle it like a business deal. That's an interesting take on the Civil War, which was fought at the end of slavery and, all that kind of stuff. But he's like, why didn't they just talk about it? Why didn't they just settle it? Like, what happened? So that's his gripe with Abraham Lincoln, is that not that he freed the slaves, which should be the racist response, right? Not that, no. Why did you have to have a war over it? Is what he said. That's funny to me. That's the interesting question in his head is why did it have to be a fight? Why couldn't we have just settled it? And that's, I don't know. That's a pretty cool question. Oh, they already coming for the White House too. I'm gonna get to that in a second. That's just hit my timeline. Remember we were talking about the Hatch Act a little while ago? Yeah. Well, they already filing on people.
Yeah, but you'd almost say, like, why wasn't that? As an example, Ukraine would have never happened, and Russia, if I were president. Israel would have never happened. October 7th would have never happened. As you know,
that's a bold claim.
Iran was broke. They wanted to make a deal.
Mm-hmm.
I told anybody buys any oil from Iran, you're finished. You know, you can't deal with the United States. Nobody was buying oil from Iran. They wanted to make a deal. Now they have $300 billion in cash. Biden has been, and her, I don't know if she was involved in it, but she's.
Now, that's not 100% true or untrue. You're talking about that Iran deal, and now Iran's supposed to have the ability to make nuclear weapons, but there's no traces of them. So we're at another one of those weapons of mass destruction is up at somebody's joint, and I'm not. Just go get the satellite footage, show it to us, and deal with it that way. I cannot do another, we think there's weapons in there, so we're going to go looking at them and start a war over that. Either you got them or you don't. And I think they should really back off of that. I think this thing has something to do with Iran. In the back end of everything, Trump is, he's going to definitely have a lot of stuff going on in front of your face. But the back end of all of this is that Iran thing. Iran has been a thorn in his side since he left office. So it's like on the get back list, that Iran situation is on the get back list. I'm just being honest. So don't be surprised when you hear about we going into Iran for something. Because Iran wouldn't do what he asked them to do. He'll ask them to do something. They're not going to do it. And then the response is going to be, all right, we got to go in there and do X, Y, Z. So watch out for the Iran thing because that's coming. That's coming.
She's terrible. Hey, look, remember this. She was the border czar. She never went there.
Right.
She was the border czar and the Border Patrol. The one thing you have to remember, the Border Patrol gave the strongest endorsement that anybody's ever seen. He's the best there is. There's never been. He's the greatest president, the greatest at the border. And she's terrible. That was their policy. And these guys are great, by the way. These are great. You know them very well from the show.
Oh, yeah.
We got the best endorsement. And that really says it all. And I think the border is a bigger thing than inflation and the economy. You know, I watch your polling where it says the economy and inflation at number 1, 2. And then it says, always says, like the 3. I think the border is bigger. I got elected in 2016 on the border. I did a great job. I couldn't even mention it after that because nobody cared because it was fixed. We had a great border. Then they blew it. Right. And I have to do it again. The difference is it's much worse this time. Mm-hmm. Right. Because they're allowing millions of people into our country that shouldn't be here.
So, Mr.
So that's a lot. So here's what we got. So we have the dismantling of the deep state. We have the dismantling of improper censorship of information and prosecution for disinformation campaigns and shutdown of the Department of Education, Federal Department of Education, and shutdown of multiple departments in D.C. segmented out to the states. Which does mean that in those states, there will be additional workflow. So there will be some jobs that become available. But what about the people in Washington that don't have their jobs anymore? So that's a balance there. So he said a lot. The education system is already screwed. So I'm going to start with that, and I'm going to get into another little piece here as I'm talking about this. The education system is screwed. And I've said this before. A lot of black people are mad about the Department of Education and the shutdown this and this and that. But other than funding possibly free lunch that funding is all coming from the states. So who are we to be worrying about the schools when we're not even taking the time to educate the children anyway? We're not even at the PTA meetings. We're not on the school board. We're not at the school volunteering, the ones that are at home that aren't working. You know what I'm saying? We expect the school to raise our kids, and that's why people got upset with the woke situation, because they're like, okay, we just wanted y'all to teach them basic stuff, not all of these other things at the same time. But the truth of the matter is we have to educate our children, just like critical race theory. My parents never told me that we weren't all from slaves, and they knew that. Well, maybe they didn't know it yet, because we did an ancestry piece, and that's how I got that information, where I was able to find out that part of my family wasn't even slaves. Like, they were indigenous Americans, Irish settlers, and all types of stuff. So the bloodline is not just somebody got dragged from Africa and a few people had sex over the last few generations and I popped up. You see what I'm saying? It's not that simple of a story, and that's the story for most Americans. Only about 40% of them came from straight out of Africa, slavery, products of the, their parents were both slaves and somebody else had a baby, then those were slaves, and those products. That's a smaller percentage. They didn't teach us that, and my parents never said nothing about it. So maybe by removing those lessons, it allows the parents to get back into being involved in their child's education again. Because if we're going to start messing with the Department of Education, we also need to start messing with the transparency of the education that our kids are receiving. A lot of times, we don't even know what the lessons are that they're getting. Everything's electronic now, so they'll put a syllabus up there, but try to go to the school and just pop up on your kid now. And of course, that's for security reasons and so on and so forth. You can't just walk in and go straight to a classroom. But in a lot of these schools, you can't just come in without an appointment. Like, you can't just come in and be like, yeah, here's my ID. My kid is such and such. They're in, whatever period right now. I just want to go check in on them, make sure they're acting right in their class. You can't even do that. But then the same schools will be upset because your kid is acting up. So it's a mixture of the responsibility of the parents to be more involved. It's a responsibility of the schools to be more transparent. And it's a responsibility of I don't want to say the Department of Education federally, but at least on the state level, to monitor these schools and make sure that they have what they need. Why would a school in a certain area not be able to have nice books when they have the same amount of kids in the school? And books aren't being refreshed as quickly in certain areas versus others. And then once you do the school choice thing and you start allowing people to only invest in certain schools, the public schools are going to take the brunt of the cuts. And the public schools are going to have to stop teaching anything other than basic educational stuff in order to receive their funding. So that's what I need people to pull from that, okay? Public schools coming for you. That's what's happening. So if you're still here in the chat, give me a thumbs up. Make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you're tapping the reactions repeatedly. Never stop, okay? And let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that it's a good idea to dismantle the Department of Education, the Federal Department of Education? Do you think that's a good idea to send the responsibility back to the states? You think it's a good idea to force parents to have a more integral role in their kids' education? Or should we trust the schools to just raise the kids for those 8 hours a day or whatever and send them home to us with just math in their brain and some science and some basic stuff? I don't know. But I got another story for you. Check this shit out. Oh, where'd it go? Here it goes. All right. So nonetheless, remember I said they were coming for the media folks, right? So this is the White House advisor, Neera Tanden, her and Karine, I can't remember this lady's name. I just think of her, I call her the wig, okay? Because she wears the wig every time. I don't know why they do that to her. She's not a bad looking lady, but the hairstyle never really changes and it's always the wig. And if that's not a wig, it's just a bad hairstyle choice. Chocolate brown woman like that, boy. Could have put her in a bunch of stuff. But anyway, so basically the advisor lady, she broke the rules, tweeted requests for political contributions on social media. And federal employees are not allowed to fundraise for political candidates. I didn't know that. So federal employees who are part of a party can't raise money for the candidates of that party. Okay. All right, so she got warned. Then she said, I don't care. She did it again. And then got caught again. Okay. Well, basically, she got herself in trouble by putting up, basically, I don't know if she was doing a GoFundMe or what she was doing. And so now she's getting, hold on, I'm reading it here. Just give me a second here. Okay. So basically, she's in trouble for some tweets. Now, my question is, who's bringing the suit and why? I don't know who's bringing the suit. And that's where my question is. Is this the White House bringing the suit against her? Is this a complaint from... Hold on a second. I'm trying to see it. I don't see it. Y'all see it? You don't see it. All right. So basically, this is what he was talking about. He was saying these people that work at the White House who partner with media organizations to basically skirt around laws and rules. And that seems to be what she was doing. So she's not supposed to, if you work at the White House, like as a job, you're not supposed to be fundraising for anyone. You can be part of a party, but you're not supposed to be openly fundraising for anybody on your social media. So that's where she broke the rules. They're going to get her for that. They'll probably get her for some money. They'll take the money and invest it in who knows what. And then this lady's probably going to get censored off of X or whatever. So the same censorship that they're trying to stop on one end is just going to continue on the other one. That's all it is. And this is what we have to look forward to. This is what we have to look forward to.
A policy that would shield immigrant spouses from deportation and help them become U.S. citizens has now been ruled illegal. A federal judge struck down the Biden administration program that would have allowed undocumented immigrants who are married to American citizens to gain legal status. That initiative, known as Keeping Families Together, allowed undocumented spouses and stepchildren of U.S. citizens to apply for a green card without first having to leave the country. In Chicago, officials are sharing new information about the plan to combine the city's homeless and migrant shelter systems.
Check this
The
out.
Sun-Times reporting 3 city-run and 2 state-run migrant shelters will remain open through the new year. But after that, they will become part of the One System initiative. At the end of the year, 7 other Chicago-run shelters will close.
So what they're going to do is they're going to take the homeless shelters, transition them into like deportation spots, and then slowly get rid of folks that way. Now, there was a proposal on the table trying to allow people who were married to citizens to stay in the country because of that marriage. And I guess if you don't have your green card or whatever up to date, or whatever the situation is, you will be taken up out of here. So that's something to think about. If you're married to somebody who's not legal, they coming for that person. And you can either let them go or go with them. It's pretty much what the options are going to be. So what are you going to do? Just saying, best to be informed, because that's what's coming. That's what's coming. So there's going to be some broken up families. There's going to be some media moguls that get brought down. The Diddy tapes will get released. The Fed will have a class action suit against probably the DOJ, the CIA, and all of those folks for Privacy Act issues. The Hatch Act for people that were online trying to create narratives or raise funds for political people when they weren't supposed to be doing so. They're going to get dealt with. So there's a lot of people going down in this. There's a lot of people going down. And when it all comes crumbling down, when it all explodes and we have to pick up the pieces, if you know how to put things together correctly, you can actually rebuild a better structure. And that's my hope. I'm hoping that all of this destruction allows not really a fresh start, but a more objective opinion to how things can be done, where things can be done, why things can be done. But I'm telling you right now, here's the next piece that they've been talking about. And make sure if you're coming in here, you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you're in the chat, make sure you keep hitting those reaction buttons. The little hundreds and the smiles or whatever. Stay on that. Tap, 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 tap. Don't stop. Right? But if you really think about it, their next plan is to round up all of the homeless people and try to live them in tent cities. So literally create the homeless people tent cities so that they can make it illegal for homeless people to be in certain areas. So a lot of those homeless people are veterans. So in a weird way, taking care of them is not a bad thing. They're talking about providing them services, social services, so that they can get reacclimated to society, or even if they choose to just live off the grid is paid for. And the truth of the matter is, if we're willing to, invest in taking care of some people that aren't from here and making sure that they're good, why not take that same money and put it right into our own homeless people? I don't mind that idea. We'll see how it works out, but that's the idea. And I'm like, that's okay. You take it from one thing and you push it to the other thing, and the other thing is closer to home. And that's why people voted for him, because of things like that. So if he manages to mess with actually help fix the homeless problem, you can't ever take that away in somebody's legacy. If he actually does that, wow, that'll be serious. I don't know if he's actually going to do it. I don't know how it works, but that's the plan. The plan is to create tent cities in lands that are maintained correctly, so that people aren't just sleeping in the middle of a park or on a bus stop. They'll have an actual tent city in the areas where homeless people live, and they'll maintain and manage the tent city. So if you want to be homeless, I mean, I don't know if they have security. Like I said, it's an interesting plan. And then let's say that, and then it would have resources on site, like, you know, doctors, mental health care personnel to actually deal with the problem head on, as opposed to waiting for somebody to come into something and they're normally homeless. You go to them and have these people on hand to help them. I think that would be an awesome idea. So you can say what you want about Trump as a person, but if he actually helps the homeless problem, respect. You know what I'm saying? Because that's an issue that's been there for years, and nobody really talks about the homeless like that because they don't really be voting. So they're not a group that you would pander to. So nobody really talks about that. Every once in a while you hear somebody talk about the veterans, and that does include some of the homeless people and a lot of homeless veterans, right? But in a general sense, you don't hear nobody talk about them. So if that's the plan and he sticks to it, I'm here for that. I'm here for that. I would love to see how that would work out, to provide job training and stuff like that directly to people where they are, instead of expecting them to come walk into an office somewhere. You go to them, you help them get cleaned up, offer mental health, drug addiction, counseling, things like that, and you go to the problem and start to try to resolve it there. That's a bold-ass move, and if that happens, I would be very, very pleased, because that's something that would help everybody. There's people out there on the street who have families and haven't seen or spoken to them in years because they're like off the grid. Now, some people are going to want to stay off the grid. I get that. But some people are off the grid because they just can't afford to be on it. And those people are the ones that are going to get help by this. So, second here, make sure I'm good here. So before I get out of here, there's one last thing I got to bring up to you, because it's been a major talking point for the last couple of days here, if not the last few months. And that's the wonderful Project 2025. So Project 2025 is what everybody's been talking about that Trump is part of. And I'm not going to bring the whole Project 2025 up here because it's 900 pages. But I will briefly review the synopsis from the ACLU. And that's the American Civil Liberties Union. They're more of a left-leaning organization. And so some of their information is going to be skewed, just being honest, okay? But the first sentence in here says the ACLU doesn't endorse or oppose candidates for elected office, but we recognize that the re-election of Donald Trump as president will have immense implications for the future of our democratic norms, institutions, and processes. Let me read that for you one more time. We recognize that the re-election of Donald Trump as president will have immense implications for the future of our democratic norms, institutions, and processes. They know he's coming in there to make some adjustments, so much so that they put it in their paging right now. Like this just, he just got elected. But this page is here if you look it up. And the American Civil Liberties Union is not a new organization. So they give a brief description of it to say in 2022, Heritage Foundation, conservative-leaning think tank, and 140 former Trump staffers authored Project 2025, a roadmap for how to replace the rule of law with right-wing ideals. Now, what exactly is a right-wing ideal? We're not going to start there, but I think we need to just keep that in mind. They mentioned that 140 former Trump staffers authored Project 2025. So if Project 2025 is the Nazi playbook, why are there 140 former Trump administration staff members signing off on it? None of those people would think it to be a problem if it was. I don't know if I like this description so far. It seems a little too directed. The ACLU will use all of the tools at its disposal, from advocacy to litigation to community organization, to defend our democracy. So everybody's still on that, this is a threat to democracy here. So what is Project 2025? It is a federal, according to ACLU, because like I said, you got to take everything from them with a grain of salt, because they already told you who they mess with. So just understand they'll put some sprinkle on there for you. But it's a federal policy in blueprint for radical restructuring of the executive branch, authored and published by former Trump administration officials in partnership with the Heritage Foundation, a think tank that opposes abortion and reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, immigrants' rights, and racial equity. Okay, well, let's see what we got here. So, what are some of the plans and proposals in Project 2025? What do we have here? It says gutting abortion access. No pun intended, right? Severely limiting abortion access nationwide, reversing the FDA's approval of mifepristone. Okay, hold on. And reviving 19th century law, the Comstock Act, to ban any abortion medications, equipment, or materials from being sent through the U.S. Postal Service. Okay, so that's the first thing that they mentioned. This is where they went wrong with the Kamala Harris campaign. The topic here, what are some plans, proposals included in Project 2025? And the first thing they mention is this. And this information ain't even right. It says severely limiting the access by reversing FDA's approval of mifepristone. Now, Trump said he wasn't going to do a national ban of anything that had. He said he wasn't even focused on that. He did what he was doing when he sent it back to the states. That's what he said. He said it is not a ballot issue for me. What it is now is what it is now. So you can't say that this is what is happening. You can't say that what is about to happen right now is that the FDA approval of mifepristone is going to be reversed. That's the first thing they mention, though. So the first thing is supposed to be the most important. And the most important thing that they have as an issue with Project 2025 is the possibility that there could be additional regulation on the abortion pill, which currently is only usable up to, I want to say 10 weeks, if that. So most state laws or states that have abortions don't have that short of a time on there. You have at least 15 weeks in a lot of them. Now, some of them is like 6 weeks, 7 weeks. It's a pretty short time period. But this is the number one issue that they're talking about. Why is this number one all the time? Why are we leading with abortion? Can anybody explain that to me? Why are we leading with abortion? Okay. See what else we got. Mass deportations. Targeting immigrant communities through mass deportations and raids. Ending birthright citizenship. Separating families and dismantling our nation's asylum system. Okay. let's look this over real quick. First of all, the first part of the sentence, targeting immigrant communities. So, the true statement would have been targeting illegal immigrants through mass deportations and raids. There is no way you can end birthright citizenship because it's a constitutional piece, and they're not going to break that. You know why they're not going to break that? Because that would take too many people out. They got plenty of other folks that don't fit under that narrative that they were born here. And if you're born here, then you're born here. There's nobody can take that away. You were born in New York City. You were born in New York City. Nobody cares that your parents were illegal. You still a citizen, okay? This ACLU document is mentioning that that's what they're going to do, and I don't believe that that's true. I don't think you can do that because birthright citizenship is called birthright for a reason. It's a birthright. You can't take away birthrights. You can take the right to birth away, but you can't take birthrights away. So separating families, yes, that is going to happen. Because if there's illegal people within the family and they don't get this paperwork together, like if you're part of that crew, you need to start working on it now. You got some time. So let's start working on it now so we're not worrying about like the story with the one lady who's mad that her husband is going to get deported. Y'all need to work that out. Y'all been here they've been married 15 years. He had like a green card or something. So whatever you got to do, go try to work it out is all I'm saying. You got a little bit of time left. So what he's trying to say, or what he's going to do here, or this situation, says dismantling the nation's asylum system. So are we going to do that? I guess that would be collateral damage, because if you can't come here other than by certain means, then there may be an effect to the asylum system. But the point is, they got to stop the flow of everybody coming in first. Then they got to figure out who's here, who's a criminal that needs to be immediately removed. Like, here's my question. If we find that there are illegal folks in jail, because they're there, I've seen them, are they going to ship them out first, or are they just going to let them serve their time in our jails, and then when they get free in whatever their time is, send them back then? Or are they just going to take them out of jail here and then just throw them back over the border and hope that they don't make it back across? These are the questions. These are the things we need to be asking about. So we got abusing warrantless surveillance, exploiting the executive branch's vast and unprecedented powers to spy on Americans' lives with warrantless surveillance of our data. That is some bullshit. Now, if you've been on this live for long enough, you heard what he said and specifically who he was talking about. And he's not saying he's going to exploit the executive branch so he can spy. He wants to stop the executive branch from being able to spy. That's what he said. So maybe Project 2025 has something different in it, but that's not what he said. That's not who he was after. He wasn't after the people. He was after the people that are spying on the people. So ACLU, I knew y'all were going to spin the shit. And this is what I'm saying. Like, we just heard the statement in the video. So that's not what he said. But it's on this website, and somebody's paying good money for this website. That's disinformation. This is the shit that's going to get y'all sued later. You see what I'm saying? Just present the damn facts. You're saying he's going to abuse warrantless surveillance, and the truth is he's going to abuse the shit out of it, but not in the way that you think. He's going to abuse publicly. He's going to abuse through the legal system all of those entities that were taking place or taking part in it. That's what's going to happen. So the ones that were doing warrantless surveillance, they're about to get abused. That's what that is. So stop spinning it. You see what I'm saying? And everybody wondering why I get upset with this. Anyway, I digress. So, unleashing undue force on protesters. First of all, this ain't even Project 2025. That was a DOD directive. I thought the ACLU was a reputable group. That's why I went to their description of this. I thought they were going to give me good information. But they're literally playing spin move on me. In real time, y'all are watching it. I hope you do your own research because you'll find that this information is not really true. Violating the First Amendment by using federal law enforcement to target journalists and protesters. That's what it says right here. If y'all can't see it, this is what it says. Unleashing undue force on protesters. Violating the First Amendment by using federal law enforcement to target journalists and protesters. So he wants to use, according to this, he wants to use federal law enforcement to shut up journalists and protesters. Okay. That's partially true. But if you were on the live long enough and you heard what he said, he was talking about a group of journalists and protesters who were pushing disinformation campaigns. That's who he's talking about. And is that First Amendment right? Do you have a right to give somebody bad information? I don't think so. You have a right to speak your mind, how you feel, but you must identify that that's what it is. I feel like this. I think this. Maybe this. Blah, blah, blah. But you can't present something as fact with the knowledge that it's not. And having the ulterior motive of trying to sway people in certain directions with your information. That is what he's coming for. So even though they want us to think that he's getting ready to use the federal law enforcement to target people that protest, like in the street, that's not even what it's talking about. You see how they spin the words? You said, I hope y'all are watching this, man. This is, like I said, this is what they need to sue people for. Unleashing undue force. So what is undue force? It could be the damn death penalty. That could be undue force. And what's undue? If you are one of the people who is committing a crime, what is undue force? If they cancel you or they don't allow you into the press conferences no more because you spitting the goofiness on X and you're acting like it's not an opinion and you're using AI to create images so people can think of stuff, yeah, you should be prosecuted. And I don't think that the force to do so is undue. I think it's due. Anyway. Next one. It's, you know what? It's a shame ain't nobody able to see this because the mainstream media have y'all thinking some other stuff, and I'm taking you through it. Let's debunk it together. That's all I'm saying. We've been talking about this stuff for a week. I've been trying to have decent conversation with my boys. I can't even have decent conversation because we can't look at things objectively anymore. It's right here. I take a left-leaning documentation, and I show it to you, and I show you what it says. And I say, if I didn't already know what actually is going on, then, and I took this at face value, then I would be misinformed and have the wrong information and be operating on incorrect information. So, like I said, let's continue to debunk this whole situation. And this is what they want people to think Project 2025 is. Now, this next one has been in the news because there were a lot of different processes that existed when the people were voting. This one is severely limit voting access. Severely limit voting access. Abusing executive power to interfere in our elections by criminalizing the voting process and damaging fair representation. Let's go over this. Severely limiting voting access. Do you know what they're proposing? They're asking for voter ID and paper ballots. That's it. And when I say voter ID, that means you just register where you vote because you live there. And if you're going to be somewhere else or whatever, like your military, you can go through the process of filling out absentee ballots or whatever it is. But you identify yourself and then you vote. You go into the polling place, you pull out your ID, and then you vote. I'm trying to see what the hell's wrong with that. I have to pull out my ID to buy alcohol. I have to pull out my ID to buy any tobacco products. I got to pull out my ID to get in the club. I got to pull out my ID to get money out the bank. I got to pull out my ID for a million different things. Why shouldn't I have to present it to vote in what can be a national change? So I'm not going to act like I don't understand. There is something fishy about that. And that's why they were crying foul back in 2020, because they left the gray areas open. And those gray areas are the areas that conspiracy theories start in. Because I've talked to people in the blue states. And it's funny, I'm sure some of y'all have seen the map. Those are the states that don't have the voter ID or request ID when you vote. And the states that didn't request ID when you vote are miraculously and magically all Democratic? Something's fishy about that. I think they should look into that a little bit. That is fishy. See what I'm saying? And you can't even say, hey, that's a little fishy. I don't know what the hell happened in 2020. I don't know what happened in 2020. I was here, but I wasn't there, if that makes sense. I didn't vote for him. I didn't vote either way in 2020. When Joe Biden won. And I didn't vote for him the first time. So I have a history of not voting for Trump and him either winning or losing. So as far as I'm concerned, my vote doesn't really matter as far as he's concerned. But what I need people to understand is they're going to feed you some craziness and have you thinking that something is something and you're responding accordingly. And that's why people don't like him, because the information they're getting is this that I'm reading to you, which is not really what's going on. Abusing executive power to interfere in our elections by criminalizing the voting process and damaging fair representation. Where is asking people to prove who they are damaging to the voting process? You see what I'm saying? Why is that damaging? Maybe we don't want random people voting in our elections. I don't want just anybody able to make those needle move to one side or the other if you're not really from here and you don't even have plans on investing in the community here. Sorry, I don't feel bad for a person having to pull out an ID. You got to pull out an ID to cash a check. You got to there's so much stuff that you need an ID for. So stop with the bitching about the voter ID. That is a dumb-ass argument. It is. Because maybe you're a good person. Maybe you won't do something wrong. But it opens up the door for the people that can. It's the whole reason why you have a security system. Your security system is there to keep things secure just in case somebody gets an idea to try to break in. But if you don't have a security system and people know that, they're more susceptible to trying to break into your shit. So if they know that there's no voter ID in certain states, and then they start shipping migrants into those states, and then those states are blue in an election, don't wonder why the population says, that's interesting. You see what I'm saying? So if you don't want us asking questions, stop doing questionable shit. That's questionable. Now that I understand that. Because I've spoken to people in different states, and I did realize there are some differences in the processes. But there weren't differences in the outcomes. When the states didn't ask for ID, they blue. When the states did ask for ID, they red. And that, to me, is interesting. So I'm saying. So let me get to the last couple pieces of this. Since everybody's scared of Project 2025, I'm showing you what they're showing people. And you're wondering why people are scared of it is the reason why I'm showing you this. Is because these are the pieces of information they're giving them without going into much context, detail, or even really presenting it as what it is. Abusing executive power to interfere in our elections by criminalizing the voting process and damaging fair representation. The ask is to present ID and have paper ballots so that if they have to do a recount, it's not about the damn machine. That's what they're asking for. But this is how they framed it. But I'm the one that got to argue this all the time. This is what I'm saying. Like, if they just gave it to me real, then I wouldn't be doing that. All right, now here we go. Censoring critical discussions in classrooms. So this was that critical race theory thing I was telling you about. So what they're going to do is censor or prevent academic discussions about race, gender, systematic oppression, in violation of the First Amendment is what they're saying. Now, First Amendment is the right to free speech. But if you are teaching in a school, the curriculum should be at the the decision of the parents to a degree. So if the parents vote that they don't want certain things in the curriculum, then they should go with the majority rule kind of thing. And if people don't like that, they can also utilize school choice and go to a different school. Because the private schools will be what they are, and the public schools will be where you can do all of this, but they won't get any federal funding. So the public schools are going to be trash in this initiative. Now, is that right? I don't necessarily think so, but it's going to force the schools to stop with the wokeness. And that's what it seems like they're doing right now. Hold on a second here. You know, somebody always calls me when I'm on a live. I don't know. And I'd be like, why are you not tuned into my live right now? Then you would know that I'm live and you wouldn't be calling me in the live. That's my son, though. I love him. I'm going to talk to him in a second. But I just need y'all to understand that we're looking at something here together, and we got to talk about it because there's fear, genuine and warranted fear. And it's warranted because if you present things in a certain way, it stokes the fear. And if you keep people from seeing things in a more objective language, I can see why people are scared. Because nobody wants to read the 900-page actual Project 2025. So we're going to listen to the ACLU come up with their synopsis of it, spin it a little bit to the left, and then they're going to present it to us in the way that they want us to take it in, which is not really true. That's my whole point. So anyway, so far, the first few things that have been on here have been total crap. Now we're going to get into something with the censoring of academic discussions about race, gender, and systemic oppression. Now, are we talking about not having a Black History Month? Are we talking about not celebrating Martin Luther King's birthday? Are we talking about not, or like rolling back on the things that have been culturally accepted now as far as honoring Black heroes and things of that nature? Are we not going to learn about Malcolm X anymore in school? Are we not going to learn about Martin Luther King anymore in school? Are we not going to learn about Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, or any of those people in school? I don't know. And that's where things can get a little slippery, because if you teach about these people and do not throw into it the fact that it was a different time and things are different now, it creates the stigma. And I'm going to say this on my internet right now, because nobody's watching, and I don't care, because I know they'll come back later and they're going to see this. Morgan Freeman once said, if we want racism to stop, we need to stop talking about it. It's a very powerful statement. And I look at it this way. I recently, my daughter, my oldest child, gave birth to a little baby girl. And congratulations to you, baby girl. And I thought about it and I said, what if this little girl could grow up in a world where she never thought that she was oppressed? And then let's say one day somebody came to her and said, you're supposed to be oppressed. And she would be like, what are you talking about? I live in a great place. I got great parents. What are you talking about? I'm not oppressed. You're oppressed for thinking I am. I wouldn't mind that world. And I know it's hard to take in because you feel like, well, if we take certain things out of the curriculum, that we're whitewashing history. No, what I'm saying is put in there, if we're going to talk about it as a time period, what the actual percentage of indigenous people were in the land, so that these kids who don't even know their history can choose a side and say, well, you know what? I'm not from that. I ain't nobody's slave. My parents wasn't nobody's slaves, so I can't even connect to that world. And maybe one day we can disconnect from it. So I know it sounds harsh. I know it does. But I would love for my new baby granddaughter, Eden, little Edie Bear, to grow up in a world where she was so oblivious to this term systemic oppression that she's killing the game. Because let me tell you what, I know plenty of black women and other women, but mostly, let me just talk about the brown ones, who come up in a world, who do things in a certain way, stay respectful, protect their minds and their bodies and their hearts, and they come out on top. So who am I to say that they are systemically oppressed when they made good decisions and got a good result? How are they oppressed? Now, that's not to say that people who are in a poverty mind state don't remain oppressed, but you don't have to be oppressed in a place that offers opportunity to not be oppressed. You don't have to not educate your children. You don't have to be for the streets. You don't have to be a thug. You don't have to be a gangster. You don't have to be any of these things. So you can't be mad about the system if we're not willing to make our own accountable decisions for what the hell we doing. We can't be mad at them talking about things in school when we haven't taken the chance to educate our own children on some of these concepts. Half of us aren't even looking at their homework. And they don't even have homework for the most part anymore. They used to have homework every day where you could have that time to work with your kid, build a little bit of bond. Now they don't even have homework no more. So it's a slippery slope for me. And it all depends on how they box it. Do we eliminate the talk and try to act like white people were just here and none of that happened? Like there was no slavery, there were no indigenous people, and do we try to just blank that slate? I don't think that's possible. So that's not the angle that can be taken. But the angle that can be taken is to teach the entirety. And do not teach about it being a systematic oppression. Teach about it being a time period. And this is what was going on. You see what I'm saying? And not as a result of this time period 200 so years ago, the person sitting next to you in the class is oppressed now. And they have to live an oppressed life. And they have to not be able to survive. And they have to, you know what I'm saying? Maybe it might be helpful to not do that. The education system we got was built by racist white guys years ago. So maybe if we take some of that out of there, it might help with actually focusing on education. I don't know. But that's what they're talking about. So you'll have to take your own opinion on how you feel about them cutting out critical race theory. Because the understanding that you must have is that critical race theory is the theory that because you're black, you are oppressed in general. Not even because something happened, but just because you're black, your life is of a life of systematic oppression that you could never escape. and you could never get over and you could never get past. And that, I don't believe that to be true. There's plenty of successful black people in the world who do not have to deal with KKK coming and setting off crosses on their front yards or lynching them in the community. That time is over with. So we can teach about it, but I think expand the story. Expand the story to talk about people like me, who come from Native Americans and Irish settlers who later had children with freed slaves. So my family, even though they come from certain slaves on certain sides, is not the product of slavery. It's the product of freed slaves intermingling with people who had migrated to the country already. Those aren't oppressed people. Those are indigenous people. So you can't teach them that they all came from the slave situation if you're not going to teach them about people like me. And you're not going to teach them about the people from Jamaica. And you're not going to teach them about the Haitians. And that basically, if you do the numbers, there's a smaller percentage of black people that are direct descendants of slaves than there are black people that are not. So the systematic oppression was built for us to always lean on it. I don't want to lean on it no more. I run circles around people, and I don't care what color they are, in many different forms. And there's plenty of people that do. So we don't need to, you're not going to tell me I'm oppressed because you can't beat me. And I don't mean that physically. There's a lot of stuff. People have talents. I run circles around people. How am I oppressed and I can still run circles around you and run circles around you in front of your own people and have them looking at you goofy like, damn, you shouldn't have tested him. That's not oppression, guys. It's not. So we don't have to teach that we live oppressed. We should be teaching that we are a product of accountability and making bad decisions when we decide to go out there and get people pregnant too early or not take care of our children and feed into the bad side of the community. We could talk about that. Maybe not in school, but we need to be talking with our kids about that and making sure that they don't go out there and do that goofy stuff. Rule number one that I told my kids when they were having children, they said, Dad, you got any advice? And I said, don't put out no bullshit. When you have children, don't put out no bullshit. Take your time to understand them, educate them, prepare them for the world, the real world, so that they can be prosperous and not be out here part of the oppressed culture that's constantly whining for the government to give them something when really they're more than capable of doing it. And if they came together, if we came together in a unified form, there would be so many more success stories than there are failure stories. But we want somebody to give us that systematic oppression. Okay, it's there, and what? I'm on the same internet. I can buy the same equipment. You see what I'm saying? Anyway, we only got a couple more left. Let's get to the last two. So we're going to roll back trans rights, okay? Now check the wording on this one. Weaponizing federal law to require states and private actors to discriminate against transgender people by threatening to sue schools that protect the rights of trans students or telling hospitals that they will lose Medicaid funding if they provide gender-affirming medical care to trans adolescents. Okay, so let's break that down. Weaponizing is an interesting word. I would go more with utilizing. But weaponizing is a stronger word, and they want you to not like this, so they wanted to use that word. But I would just say utilizing federal law to require states and private actors to discriminate against transgender people by threatening to sue schools that protect the rights of trans students or telling hospitals that they would lose their Medicaid funding if they provide gender-affirming medical care to trans adolescents. So, what this is coming for is guys transgender males, transgender people playing in sports of binary folks. guys and girls sports. That's what they're going to be discriminating. Is that discrimination, or is that just the policy of the sport itself? It's called girls basketball. You're not a girl, so you shouldn't be playing on the court right now. You should be on the other court. And if necessary, let's create a third court, and then they can play against each other, and that's fair to me. And whoever wants to watch that sport can watch that. It'd just be a whole nother sport. You know what I'm saying? Whole nother league. The TFL, you know what I'm saying, or whatever. So, I don't know. They're calling it rolling back trans rights. Well, right now, they don't have a right to do all of that. I think it wasn't addressed correctly, and so people started doing it because they couldn't even define what a woman was, so you couldn't tell somebody to stay out of something for not being a woman if you don't know what a woman is. Then everybody's a woman. Everybody's a man. Everybody's whatever they want to be. So you can't stop a person from doing something if you allow them to just identify with whatever is necessary to be part of this thing. That's what they did. And because people took it too far, that's why they're trying to roll that back. Now, I am not a proponent for giving hormones and hormone blockers and stuff to kids. I'm not. I think that should be reserved for people over 18. If they want to transition to something, then they can do so then. The point of the hormone blockers is so that their body doesn't develop into what it would naturally develop into, so that they don't have as far to transition from. So it stops estrogen from producing, so that a woman doesn't get massive mammaries, right? So that it's easier to either remove them or cover them up over time. I don't think that's for your 12-year-olds. I think we should keep that away. But the problem is, if you allow the body to complete puberty, then the transition is much harder to make, and it requires way more surgery, and it requires way more money. So by adding these hormone blockers and stuff in the early stages, it makes it so that when they fully want to transition later, it's less work. I know that sounds a little heartless, but that's what they're talking about. So I'm not big on that. I'm not big on that. And if Project 2025 is designed to not do that to kids, okay. I'm not going to fight against that. I'm not going to fight against, stopping funding for doctors who are performing these procedures on children. You can't just randomly have a sexual relationship with a child, so I don't think you should be chopping them up because they want to be another sex. I just don't think that's a cool thing to do. And I understand why they might want to roll back some things because it's a lot to take in. All right? So understand that's what they're saying. They'd use the term weaponizing, but I don't like that term. This is no boys in the girls' room, no girls in the boys' room, no men in women's sports. That basic premise. That's what the rolling back trans rights piece is. So if you agree with that, then you shouldn't have much of a problem with this part of Project 2025. All right. So nonetheless, they asked the question, what is the connection from the president to Project 2025? And you'll notice nowhere in there did they say that he wrote it, but they did make a mention that Trump has falsely claimed he is not connected to Project 2025. Now, what Trump had said was he didn't write Project 2025. He has said that, which is true. He didn't write it. And he didn't necessarily sign off on it, but he likes some of the concepts in it, and it's been molded into what is known as Agenda 47 locally. Okay? So the terminology used within this article that we just saw is untrue to certain degrees, but the points that it's covering are things that are going to be part of Project 2025. But we could stop calling it Project 2025 and call it the shit Trump getting ready to do. And if you want men and women sports, you're definitely not going to like what he's about to do. If you want the tampons in the bathroom thing, you're not going to like that. If you want federal abortions up until the child is born, you're not going to like what he's working on. So I don't know if we're supposed to be on the side of that, but me personally, I can't come up against most of the concepts. It's just the implementation that I think is going to be a little messy, like the deportation thing. I do believe that some people need to get up out of here. How we get them out of here is going to be messy, and that's the thing. Am I afraid of the mess to a degree that I don't want the action to take place? And that is the moral conundrum that we're in. It's like, I want this to happen, but I know that making this happen is going to create chaos for a second. Do I not do what I need to do because I'm worried of the chaos that will ensue? I don't know. I don't know if that's what we're going to do, but I do know that if they don't stop with spinning the words and making it so I got to do all this research to find out what they're really talking about, then I'm going to be upset. And I hope Trump starts suing them. I really do, because it takes too much of my time to go dissecting these stories from what are supposed to be reputable outlets who have been paid to say things in a certain way, like the term weaponizing. What's a weapon? If it's a law, it's a law. If you don't want guys and girls sports, that's not a weapon you use. The only weapon is what the guys have down below that are in the girls sports. That's the weapon. That's not what people want. Maybe in other countries they like that, but America ain't with all that. We don't get down like that. Not on the grand scale. Like, you can have that, but we don't all have to be part of it. If that makes sense. We're not part of that, so we don't have to be part of it. But anyway, I'm ready. I'm ready. I'm here for it. I told y'all in the very beginning, I'm here for it because I can see how Trump moves. He's visible right in front of you, constantly on the TV, constantly talking. So you pay attention, you know exactly what he's doing before he does it. So you don't have to be surprised by nothing. And I'll take that any day over these reputable news outlets trying to tell me that something is what it is, and it's not that. It's bigger than that, to be honest. And I want to be smarter than that. But they want us to be dumb and just read these little, bits and then run, oh, he's going to do this. Then he ain't even say he's going to do that. And you responding to something, he ain't even say that. And he couldn't even do that you talk about. So we're not going to worry about it. What we're going to worry about is making sure that we like and subscribe to this channel. If you are still here, I appreciate you jumping on. I appreciate you coming and hanging out with me on the live today on a Saturday. I was trying to help people cope with the new administration, but I'm realizing some people don't want to cope with it. Some people would rather just argue over the misinformation, whether or not it's misinformation, than to get to the point of having a good discussion about the information. And that's tough for me to deal with, man. Because that, my friends, it's bullshit.